the common denominator in all of our relationships is us.
Yeah.
And so when there are repetitive themes that come up, that is a valuable mirror to go, okay, well, what is it that I need to work on? And certain issues with one person may be really incompatible and cause a lot of kind of friction. And with someone else, they could feel much safer and happier with that. For example, kind of tightness around this needs. So there is a compatibility piece, it sounds like, but there is also, in a sense, the parts of yourself that you struggle with. It sounds like some of the time they're also a struggle for other people to be with, which is all of the more incentive and reason to work on those elements. In a sense, it sounds like you have a tendency, that analytical anxiety mind where you go round and round and round on something. It sounds like you have a tendency early on in a relationship to do that about the relationship, which probably does cause you to want to run away sometimes because it's too intense. It might push them away sometimes. It probably makes you more emotionally volatile sometimes as well, because something relatively small happens. It's like, oh my God, this relationship's never going to work. And there's a kind of overreactivity perhaps that probably does come in. Of course, the more that you work on calming and settling your system, it's not just then that your own anxiety becomes calmer, but also your responses probably become more measured as well.
Yeah.
Does that resonate somewhat?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. If I ask a question, it's not. I don't mean it critically, but is that your sort of catch-all answer for everything, or is that like? Do you know what I mean? Or is that, because I'm just curious if so, that worries me a bit, because I suppose the jury is out for me in terms of not maybe whether I can calm it, but how much by, and all those sorts of things. So it's
I think often there are common threads and common denominators between people's inner lives. And so if someone has, for example, which is not your pattern, but someone's got a pattern of they explode and they get angry at everyone, that's going to have impacts on their physical body. It's going to have impacts on their intimate relationships, on their family life, on their work life. And there may be different instances of different ways that plays out, but there's a fundamental shared kind of piece that they're too quick to respond. There's a kind of hotness and aggressiveness that comes in. If they calm that down, is that going to fix every issue in all of those areas? No. Is it going to make each of those areas work better? Yes. Same thing's true with anxiety. If you have an ongoing pattern of quite strong anxiety, it's going to have an impact in different areas. Is it a realistic expectation that you're going to be someone that's just like the opposite personality, like completely in the moment, go with the flow, completely relaxed? No. Is that even what you're here to aspire towards? I don't think it is either. It's to work on the sharper edges of the pattern that are causing unhappiness for you in your life. And it's causing unhappiness for you in your inner life, but it's also having, it sounds like, some impacts in your relationship life. And what I didn't hear you describe in that scenario was, I met someone that potentially could have been my life partner and I was really into, and then my anxiety patterns came up and that was the reason why it didn't work out. That wasn't what I heard you say. What I heard you say was that we had some chemistry and that chemistry was strong at times. And there was a incompatibility in our elements of our character, and my anxiety patterns added another element of stickiness, let's say, to some of what was going on.
I suppose, it's just, before, so my last sort of significant relationship was just about 10 years ago. And so I suppose every time I sort of nearly get into a relationship, it's like it sort of becomes a self-beating weapon that's like, oh, look, you nearly did it again, but you fucked it up again. And yeah, whilst I wasn't like, it was still early days with this person. She was absolutely lovely, and I am sort of worried that I've pushed away someone who could have been, I don't know. That's the point, I suppose.
Yeah.
I just feel it's hard to come away, for me anyway, it's hard to come away from these situations without feeling like it's all my fault.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a big part of that is your inner critic is taking the situation and weaponizing it against you.
Yeah.
Right. And the truth is, without going into a massive forensic analysis of everything that happened in the relationship, what I'm hearing you describe as something that's probably a 50-50 and an incompatibility.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is a value judgment on your value or your worth as a human being. But I hear what you're saying, that it's being used as that by your inner critic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think also going back to your question around not necessarily believing that that there's a limit to how far you can go with the anxiety piece. I think what I would say is a couple of things. One, you can definitely calm the extremities of that anxiety. And I think, hopefully you recognize that to be true, and I want to come in a minute, some of the meditation pieces. But I think the other piece, which in some ways is, if not more important, at least as important, is a lot of the time at the moment, you're buying the story of your anxiety. What often happens is, like, to take the example I gave of someone getting angry, it isn't necessarily that they no longer, in the resolution or the progress, let's say, in that pattern, they lose the instinct towards anger. They just are not at the mercy of it. So something might happen, and they might still have that response, but rather than their mind jumping on it and pouring fuel on the fire and it kind of exploding, it's like they can recognize it, identify it, and then they can let it go somewhat. Same is true of the anxiety. It may not be that the anxiety thoughts necessarily completely stop, but right now a thought comes in that triggers another thought, and then it kind of gets bigger and bigger, and it has a level of momentum which is very hard to not be pulled along by.
Yeah.
And what we're working towards is, firstly, this calming of the system, but secondly, it not having that same power and momentum. You might have some of the thoughts, but you recognize them for what they are, and you're able to let go of the grip that they have on you. I think that's my observation of what people tend to experience in terms of progress and change.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How does that sound to you?
Yeah.
Does that feel more believable?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah.